Hello again. So, what I think I want to talk about is the origin of science. And I'm not going to say I know loads about this because I definitely do not know loads about this. But I just want to speculate about probably not the origin of science, but the philosophical relationship to science, which I would presume is, at least in part, an origin to science. Okay, so briefly, we go back to the ancient Greeks. So, we had some ancient Greek philosophers. I'm probably not going to be able to name many of them, but one of them was Pythagoras. Pythagoras, who was a mathematician. And then we've got Heraclitus, who asked questions about the nature of reality, and I believe he was also a mathematician, which is really interesting. He was interested in the material world and how it was changing. Therefore, we can never step in the same river twice. Okay, and then we've got Plato, who's not very scientific, to be honest, but he's interested in maths. Okay, and then we go to Aristotle. Aristotle was sort of scientific, he developed ideas of the four causes, I believe. What was the four causes? First, formal, efficient, and final. So that they were also scientific ideas. So I'll probably start there. I'll start with Aristotle, and then I'll probably move over to I think it's Bertrand Russell. I'm not sure exactly. It's been a while since I've thought about this. Well, I've thought about it quite a bit, but it's been a while since I actually studied it, I guess. So, Aristotle's four causes. So, I guess Aristotle's four causes are a way of describing the material world. They're a way of defining, in a way, or stating the existence of material affairs on multiple different metaphysical levels. I'm going to say metaphysical levels because I think that's the correct term to use there. Okay, so there's the first cause isn't the first cause, it's the material cause. Okay, so the material cause is the matter of which an object is made from, even. So, if I take this TV remote, the matter, plastic, probably some metal, and a little bit of rubber for the buttons. Okay? And that is an objective fact. That is what this TV remote is made of. Now, it's possible that we could have a TV remote made of different materials, but the fact of the matter is that we need a TV remote that's made of some form of matter. Otherwise, it can't serve any purpose. Right? So, that's quite an important thing. That matter is a part of a thing. Of something that exists. But then that's a bit of a contentious statement, I know. Okay, so then, what else has this TV remote got? It's got a form. Okay. The form of the TV remote is what allows us to characterize this as a TV remote. Now, obviously, maybe you can get some rectangular TV remotes. This one's a bit more rounded. But you would look at that and say, okay, well, it's formed in a way that I would be able to walk into a room and recognise that as a TV remote as opposed to it being a lamp or a piano or a cat. It's clearly a TV remote. And that's because of the way it's formed and what it's made out of. Okay? So, those are two components or aspects that make a thing what it is. The third necessary component to make a thing exist is an efficient cause. So an efficient cause is essentially the maker. It's the one who turns the matter, the raw material, into a formed object. Okay? So, for instance, I wouldn't be able to tell you how plastic is made, alright? But I know it's not a naturally occurring subject. It's not a naturally occurring object, I'll say. I can't think of the word. It's not a naturally occurring material. So we've had to get a man or a woman to come in and sort of create this plastic and then form it into the shape of a TV remote. And Aristotle's final cause is it's the purpose. It's the telos of the object. So, on top of all those three things, we also know it's a TV remote because we know it has a purpose. The purpose of the TV remote is to watch TV. And obviously that's not going to mean anything to anyone unless, of course, you own a TV, have experienced the TV in the past. But then you've also got to consider that these four causes apply to pretty much everything, according to Aristotle. So the TV is also under the same four constraints, or is subject to the four causes. Because the TV was also created, the TV is also made of matter, the TV also has a purpose, and that purpose is fulfilled by acting in accordance with something else that also has matter and form, an efficient cause and a purpose. Okay, so what's the point in highlighting that? Why do we need to know that? And I've sort of questioned that a little bit. And I understand I haven't gone into too much detail about that, because like I said, I haven't studied it for a while, but why do we need to know that? Why do we need to know the positions of objects in the material world? Why do we need to know what things are made out of? Why do we need to define these sorts of things? And I guess that's just what philosophers do. They break down the world around us and I guess try to find truth. And that's where I'm gonna go to with the basis of modern science. So if I skip forward a few hundred years, it's actually a few centuries. I mean a few millennia. One and a half millennia, I think. So to the 18th or 19th century, I believe, we have Auguste Comte, Bertrand Russell, and Ludwig Wittgenstein. Okay, so Bertrand Russell started to develop an atomic theory, or something of that sort. I think it's called atomic theory. And this basically said, I'm probably not going to be able to do this any justice, but from what I could gather, this way of looking at the world was basically just a way of breaking the world down into facts. And obviously the facts aren't the things in themselves. The facts are the language that we use to describe the things in themselves, so the world around us, if that makes sense. So, for example, I could say that there is a sofa in the living room. And that's a really complicated fact, actually, because the living room in itself is a negating piece of language. So in order to understand the living room, you have to understand all of the different components within the living room. Perhaps that's a false statement because we don't necessarily have to understand all of the components within a room to be able to understand the entirety of the room. But, oh my god. See, now this is making me question what makes something a living room, and I feel like that's going a little bit outside of what I'm actually wanting to do here, what I'm trying to get to. Anyway, maybe I should just go with it and be a bit more liberated in what I'm thinking about. So this atomic theory, we'll say there is a cat on the table. there is a pen in my hand. There is a light bulb on the floor. Okay? So all of these are different facts which may describe the world, the material world around us, which seems to be something that we want to do. And I guess the reason we want to do this from a scientific perspective, perhaps, is because, and I'll probably quote Thomas Hobbes here. Thomas Hobbes said, "All that is not matter is nothing and hence nowhere." And that means that all there is the material world. And if all there is the material world, then that means that that's the most true world. It means that that's the only world there is. Okay, so this is the only world we really have to understand. Therefore, we're going to find our highest truth from looking at and observing the material world. And we do have to take into account that the Bertrand Russell's atomic theory, it's not necessarily in accordance with modern science, because it was... It's slightly annoying because I don't know the dates specifically, but I think it was like 100 or 200 years ago. So there wasn't as many advancements, I guess, in science back then. They didn't have as much equipment as we do have now to be able to look at the material world in much more detail. For example, the use of microscopes, which is also looking at the material world, but it's looking on the material world on a much smaller level. So perhaps if Bertrand Russell was still alive today, he would find that extremely interesting. He would say that those are also facts, that the atoms, which I know he called it atomic theory, maybe he did realise this, maybe he did realise that the world was made up of particles and atoms, and that's why he called it atomic theory. But that's not how I understand it. How I understand it is that he said there are atomic facts, and then there is a derivative fact or something. The atomic fact is a fact that's broken down into its smallest possible form. And obviously this is contentious, because can we ever break a fact down into its smallest possible form, especially when we have the likes of atoms? And when you go into the likes of atoms, you look at an atom, so say you look at a particle or an atom within a piece of wood. When you're looking at that atom or that particle, you're no longer looking at the piece of wood, you're looking at one of the many components that make up that piece of wood. It's not the same thing. And obviously that seems to be maybe going a little bit too far. So I think an atomic fact, according to Bertrand Russell, would be, rather than looking at the atoms within the piece of wood, obviously I'm speculating here, he would say that they're okay, I'm going to formulate this in a sentence, so hence a fact. There is a piece of wood. Okay? So that, I guess that's an atomic fact. It doesn't have any relationship to anything else. It's just the fact that there is a piece of wood. So would this be an atomic fact? There is a piece of wood on the table. I don't think that would be an atomic fact, because then there's two things. An atom implies one, right? Okay? Yeah, so again, I feel like I've gone off topic a little bit. Okay. So I guess the reason I wanted to make this video is because when I've studied Bertrand Russell's ideas in the past, I bet I've got the wrong philosopher as well. I bet I've done that. Oh well. Because when I've studied Bertrand Russell's ideas in the past, I have struggled to get my head around the purpose of him pointing all this stuff out. Like, what's the point in you telling me that we can describe the world in a scientific way and that be true? You know, what's the point in you telling us that we can say, that we can speak of the world around us with using language and then somehow get to truth? What's the point? And that's what I couldn't get. It's like, obviously there's a TV in the room, obviously there's a piece of wood on the table. These are all self-evident things, are they not? And maybe they are all self-evident things, but maybe it was a necessary stepping stone in the history of thought and ideas in order to get to the scientific developments that we're at today. because we have to start somewhere, you know? There was a time when we didn't know the things that we know now, and in order to know the things we know now, we had to start small and work our way up. And that's the way it works. And maybe it's a bit presumptuous to say that the only truth is the material world. Okay, but obviously I don't believe that for a second. But it's a good place to start. It's a good place to say, well, actually, I look at the world around me. I experience the world around me. I experience matter. I experience people. I experience things, you know, and I can see and touch and feel these things around me. And and that's almost reassuring to say, okay, this is the only world because this is the world that I can see and touch and smell and feel with my senses. But then, of course, I guess we have to question the limits of our senses, and that's again a progression in the history of ideas. Even though Descartes sort of already did that way before Bertrand Russell came along with his scientific ideas, which is interesting. But then I guess you could say, well, when we have a progression of ideas within a society, it's not like everyone's going along with those ideas within a set society, especially in the modern day. There's often different subcultures who have different ideas about the world, and those ideas are often conflicting with other people's ideas. So, you know, maybe we're never going to be able to come to a consensus. Maybe we need the diversity of ideas, and one day we'll come to some sort of realization about the truth of the world, and we'll have a massive revelation, and our brains will have basically expanded and grown and developed so much through the process of evolution that we'll basically just understand everything. And wouldn't that be pretty neat? Wouldn't that be nice? You know, but at this stage in human development, I'm not sure we're ready for that, and I'm not sure we'll ever get there. Oh my god, existential crisis time, much? Someone's gonna basically probably set off a nuclear weapon and kill the whole of humanity. And should we blame science for that? Who knows? Okay, right, that's it. That's it. I feel like I talked about what I wanted to talk about and did it relatively fluently. So I'm gonna go now anyway, so thank you for watching.